Very nice and enjoyable. A little cooler weather. You'll notice there's a lot of prescribed burns going on up in the forest, South Forest prescribed burn stuff. You'll see smokes coming up and going away, off and on throughout. So for the month of April, it's kind of what April looked like. We had 18 motor vehicles, 34 fires, and again, 191 medicals. Currently, we're just kind of keeping on. We're doing hose testing tonight, actually. We had a really nice stop and save yesterday on a structure fire. Other than that, it's pretty much business as usual in the fire department. Things are going along well. Any questions?
Thank you.
Excellent response, Jeff. Yesterday, that was great. You don't take that quick.
Thanks.
All right, Mr. Sunstang's out of town. And included his Parks and Recreation report in the packet for you this evening. We'll move on to the Police Department, Chief Sosa.
Hello, everyone. The statistical information has been provided in the packet. The other things that I have to report on, we've had a pretty productive week this week. I've worked on policies and our general orders are ready to be placed on our webpage for transparency purposes so the residents can understand how we do the things that we do. I've met with the schools. We'll be helping them with their graduation ceremonies that are going to happen this Sunday. I've met with the court clerk and the judge to get an understanding of how they function and what we're doing right and where areas where we can improve. I met with the Hamilton Police Chief to try to build a relationship with our partners so we can have a good working relationship with Hamilton, where we can possibly assist them with training and they can possibly assist us. I met with the Sheriff's Office and we had a good understanding of where our relationship can go. They seem to be supportive of Stevensville. They want us to be responsive for our citizens. They want us to handle our calls, handle our investigative work. They indicated that they're there to support us in any way that we may need. And I'm hoping by tomorrow afternoon, I'll keep my word and I'll start walking and knocking on doors to see what the residents actually want from your police department.
Any questions? Okay, great. Thanks for the first report, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Cruz has given his public works activity report in the packet for you. He's unable to join us this evening due to other conflict in schedule. So if you have questions on that, just let us know as well. We'll rapid fire get through those. There are no guests or correspondence to recognize this evening for the town council, and so we'll move swiftly right into the budget amendment for fiscal year 19 and 20. One note real quick under finance, I just wanted to relay, there was a question about the audits on the website under public comment. We verified all the audits through fiscal year 17-18 are on the website under town audits. The audits that are missing are 19-20. The 19-20 audit has not occurred. That's scheduled for June. And that's kind of ties into the budget amendment before you this evening. The purpose of the public hearing is to give the public an opportunity to provide feedback and public comment on amending the fiscal year 19-20 budget. Further in your packet, you'll see a council communication from the finance department addressing the budget amendment in its entirety. Largely, I guess in brief, the reason for the budget amendment, let me get to this. There are certain funds where we overspent due to various whatever cases existed. Those are primarily in the lighting districts, the Economic Development Fund and the Fireman's Disability Fund. We underestimated expenditures. For example, in the Fireman's Disability Fund, we estimated the amount of money we'd receive from insurance apportionment from the state. That amount of money was greater that we received in revenue, and we're required to pass that money through to the Fireman's Disability Fund. And so because we passed that through, we exceeded our expenditures because we received more than we thought we would. Economic development is another area where this would have been the fiscal year where the Main Street Association closed down, and we took on some of the work that they do. We took on some of the things like the economic development website for Stevensville. We finished that out and started transitioning everything onto the main town of Stevensville website. So there were some costs involved in doing that, and it exceeded what we anticipated spending. The other areas are around the FAA grants that we received for the airport taxiway rehabilitation project, where we exceeded what we anticipated spending and we exceeded the revenue to offset that. So I guess the bottom line in all of these is that there is some revenue source tied back to these exceeding expenditures. The last piece then is authorizing a transfer of funds into the ambulance fund from the general fund. This is one that's not necessarily tied to revenues where we exceeded revenues, but where the ambulance fund, we overestimated the revenue in that fund. That fund is not generating the revenue like we anticipated in terms of ambulance transports. So we're basically just cash flowing, segregating those costs out. So we need to transfer some cash out of the general fund reserves into the ambulance fund to make that fund balance and to go back into a positive figure there. Are there questions from council on the budget amendment before we open for the public hearing? Okay. Then we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Please step forward to the podium, state your name and address for the record, sign the sign-in sheet, and you may provide your comment. Is there any public comment on budget amendment?
Paul Michelson, 222 Turner Street. These came up in, I believe, December of 2019, when Mr. Gibson was the president. And I think you guys segregated all of them out at the time instead of just voting all at once. I would hope you guys would break these down too and discuss each and every one. Thank you.
Excuse me, Leanna Rotova, 204 Valley Street. I'm a little confused, which isn't unusual with somebody my age. But I don't understand how you can go back that far to correct something and where you're going to get the money from. If it comes out of the general fund, I think this total is $213,000. What is that gonna do to the general fund? Anybody?
The public comment period, unfortunately, Mr. Ottavah, is not a dialogue area. But I'm noting your questions and we'll address them under the agenda item.
I'm a little concerned though that this goes back so far and you're just now catching it. Seems like a lack of paying attention to the funds in the town. And I would hope you people would be a little concerned about this. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing then for the budget amendment on fiscal year 2018-2020. Moving into unfinished business, we have discussion decision, first reading of ordinance 167, rezoning certain parcels from R1 to R2 residential. This carries over from your previous meeting where public hearing and initial discussion occurred. You expressed preference to have a representative of the developer here in the room to discuss the project. Mr. Nelson is here to provide whatever information you'd like to discuss on the project in its entirety. So this constitutes first reading, and second reading would come following if you were to approve first reading. Would you like to just move it right into a discussion from Mr. Nelson? Very good.
I guess my biggest question, Mr. Nelson, is gonna be, what's the plan? If we did approve this and construction were to start taking place, what is your guys' plan as far as where the water's gonna go that's sitting there? I think that's everyone in Montana's question, honestly.
Yes, yeah, well, we could do the mass mansion thing and run it underneath the house for air conditioning, but we certainly, I mean, that's something that we are well aware of, and I've talked to an engineer about seeing what we can do to help alleviate the problem. There's certainly drainage that goes right through the middle of it. We would probably reroute that. We would have to comply with DEQ Circular 8, which is a stormwater drainage plan. There is a piece of property outside of the city limits, just to the north of this, a small piece that already has some cattails and whatnot on it. One thing we discussed was maybe making a bigger retention or detention pond there for additional water that would be created from this, taking it out of the field and making it into condos and the roads and whatnot. So, and we may end up, we supplied, although all that this request is a request to change the zoning from R1 to R2. We did provide a sketch of what could possibly be there. That may have to be scaled back some based on having more retention or detention for the stormwater in there. So this compliance with circular, does that require them giving you a certificate or a license or approval or something in writing that says that you have a plan to change? Yes, yeah. Yeah, the DEQ reviews it to make sure, and that you are not required to deal with what naturally already comes off the property, but you cannot allow additional drainage to come off the property. So that's where we would need to figure out the proper plan, and typically that's done through retention or detention basins. I've not seen it in Ravalli County, but you get into big cities and stuff, they even have membranes put underneath parking lots and roads to handle and hold water during storm events. So there's ways of doing that. At this point in time, we're simply looking to see whether or not we do the R2, and then we get into the big engineering to see what actually will fit on there and what we can do with stormwater.
Anything further from the town council?
Just to clarify what you had just said, so the release of the water just has to be at what is considered historical rates
Yes.
prior to?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you do calculations on what is going out of natural ground and becoming pavement, what's becoming rooftop, what's becoming lawn actually reduces the amount that goes off. So there's just calculations that go into all of that and come up with how much excess water you have. And then you have to show how you're going to be keeping that on site.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the town council? All right, thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
All right, from this juncture, is the council inclined to approve first reading of ordinance 167?
I'll make a motion to approve first reading.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Vick, seconded by Mr. Sherd to approve first reading of ordinance 167, rezoning certain parcels from R1 to R2. Council discussion. Public comment. Okay, hearing none, we'll call for the vote. Ms. Bertha.
Councilmember Ludington.
Aye.
Councilmember Sherman.
Aye.
Councilmember Vick.
Aye.
You can include Ms. Devlin, she's on the Zoom call.
Aye.
Can you hear us? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, that motion passes. We'll schedule this for second reading at the next council meeting. Moving into new business then, we have discussion decision, special event and alcohol use permit for Western Heritage Day. It looks like we have a representative of Western Heritage Day here in the room. So Trey, if you don't mind coming forward and just giving a quick overview of the event and what you're asking for, and then we can let the council deliberate.
Victoria Howell. You may recall that last year we did not have Western Heritage Days because of COVID. So our last one was in 2019, hugely successful. And so we want to copy it exactly. So what we're proposing, as we did that year, I'll give you the overview, but there's only a part of it that involves the council. The overview is that at Priest Park, we'll have the chuck wagon cook-off. So that's on private property and there's no alcohol there. Then downtown, we won't have a parade. Then downtown, we would like to close off the block between Main and Church. The block of East Third between Main and Church. We use that street there. We use the Stevensville Hotel lawn and we use the Rocky Mountain Bank parking lot. There'll be the bouncy houses and all that stuff in the bank parking lot. the band and the people are on the street as well as the food trucks, the food vendors are on that side. And then the where we sell the alcohol is on the Stevensville Hotel lawn, but what we are asking is that you allow us to allow people to have their open container in that block. And that's what we've always done, even before 2019, we've always done it that way. It makes for a nice celebration. It's very well contained. We put up barriers, we hire security. And that goes from about noon to 10 p.m. Then on the west side of Third, we do an expanded farmer's market. So the farmer's market already has that street closure, but we ask for that street to be closed, you know, basically for the entire day. And we handle our own garbage, our own, you know, toilets, our own cleanup. And our own insurance, of course, we have the necessary insurance. Do you have any questions?
Thank you for bringing it back.
Oh,
Appreciate
you're
it.
welcome. Yeah, we're so excited. Everyone is just so excited to get out and have some fun.
And congratulations to Project 597.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for noticing. We're really proud of that.
I just had a question.
Oh,
They're hiring their own security. We saw the police presence.
Correct,
There as well.
yep. We'll have our regular staffing.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve special use permit and, let's see what the rest of it, an alcohol permit.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Vick, second by Mr. Sherwood to approve the special event alcohol use permit for Western Days. For the council discussion,
Let me know what you need.
Thanks.
Right, my apartment door.
Okay.
is there any public comment? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. Ms. Bertha.
Councilmember Devlin,
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherwood.
Aye.
And Councilmember Vick.
Aye.
All right, thank you. The next item of business is new business item B, a new rephasing request for phases 2 and 3 of the Twin Creeks subdivision. I expected Ron here, I'm not sure if something came up. The request for rephasing is in your packet. You can see there that I think the differences in the maps where they're simply reconfiguring which lots are built when. They are not reconfiguring the lot configuration necessarily, where they're not moving lot lines or not rezoning. They're only changing which lots are being built at which date. That's all they're doing. Correct, yeah, exactly. So it is a straightforward request and ties in with the final plat adjustment deadlines or deadline adjustments that the council previously took, I think roughly a year ago or maybe a little shorter than that, but you allowed them an extension to final plat to file phases, and now they're just asking to rephase which lots they build when. So
So by the way that I'm looking at this is the original plan. Like you said, it's just got,
correct, same plan, same exact preliminary plat. They're just changing the number of lots they built in the second phase versus the third phase.
okay,
I think their ultimate goal here is to try to see if they can accomplish something else.
oh yeah, no, definitely. I just did have the question that for this, is there a notice requirement? Like within the 500 feet or whatever that notice requirement is?
No, we couldn't determine that was the case, because you're only rephasing. Now, before the phase commences, a public hearing, before the final plat is filed, the public hearing is needed.
Okay.
And that's typical of phasing.
Yeah.
plans is before the final plat's filed, then public hearing is held.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Vick, second by Mr. Ludington to approve the new rephasing request for phase 2 and 3 of Twin Creeks. Council discussion. Public comment? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. Ms. Berghoff.
Councilmember Devlin,
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherwood,
Aye.
and Councilmember Vick.
Aye.
Okay, next on the agenda is new business item C, discussion decision on resolution 486, amending the fiscal year 1920 budget. I think the budget amendment was largely explained in your public hearings a few moments ago. A couple of clarifications came out of the public comment. The total budget amendment that or financially, the impact of this budget amendment is a total dollar amount of $251,532. $232,000 of that is from the airport project directly, and that's offset with FAA grant funds that came in. The impact of the general fund then is a $9,800 transfer out of the general fund into the ambulance fund. Though if the reality is that if the ambulance fund didn't exist, the expenses from the ambulance fund would be in the general fund anyway, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. The rest of the balance then of the funds that I haven't highlighted already come from the cash reserves of that specific fund, whether that be the lighting district or the economic development fund, and those funds have the cash reserves to sustain the overrun in expenditures, whether it be by revenue or because they have the cash on hand to do that. When it comes to timing, Mr. Underwood has worked diligently to close out the fiscal year books for fiscal year 1920. Part of that process is the annual financial report, and we work through that entire process and bring back a bulk of budget amendments at one time. So we don't prematurely bring budget amendments before the council because there's an expense to noticing in the paper and all of those things that we have to do to get a budget amendment before you. So that's why sometimes these are timed a year after the fact, is because it takes us a whole slew of time to get through the entire AFR to identify exactly what funds need adjusted and what adjustments are needed. So if you decline, and this will occur in the fiscal year prior, if you decline any of these amendments, it results in an audit finding in the audit. So it's just runs into that. Basically, the reason for that is because the auditors want the governing body to acknowledge and amend their budget to reflect what you actually spent.
I want to make a motion to segregate out the ambulance and the lighting district.
So second.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Vick, seconded by Mr. Ludington to segregate the ambulance and lighting district from the primary resolution. Am I understanding that correctly, Mr. Vick? Okay. Is there any council discussion on separating?
Yeah, I guess my primary question would be why an ambulance fund exists in the first place.
The ambulance fund exists because we're set up to bill for ambulance services. And because while we do not actually collect revenue on ambulance services on a regular basis, because the potential exists, the state bars system, which designates how we manage our accounting, because there's a potential for that kind of revenue, that's special revenue, they require us to separate the fund out. And so that puts us in this pickle where we're constantly having to move. You're going to see another cash transfer. So, I mean, we did all of that, setting that up with good intentions, knowing that we had a backup service, we were establishing a backup service. We were short-sighted in the accounting challenges that it poses. In that we have to move cash out of the general fund to keep this ambulance fund sustained. So, I mean, you're not spending money you don't have, because the reality is you just spend it out of the general fund anyway. It's just that we have to go through this process periodically to move funding over. Instead of budget amendmenting it going forward, we're going to budget if we know not going to anticipate revenue coming in for the ambulance fund. So we're going to budget those transfers going forward so that we can just make the transfers every year instead of having to come and ask for you to do that.
That's what I was gonna suggest.
Okay, yeah, no, we just have to get ahead of that bubble.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on separating those two pieces out of the primary resolution? Is there any public comment on the separation of the items? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. Ms. Bertha?
Councilmember Devlin,
We might have lost her for a second.
Sorry. It's really spotty. I apologize. Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Ludington.
Aye.
Councilmember Sherwood.
Aye.
And Councilmember Vic.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. So first, we can consider the rest of the amendments separate from the ambulance and lighting district pieces, which would be named Resolution 486.
Go ahead, make your motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 486.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 486.
Real quick, what you were mentioning about the airport. So you said that fund was already offset by the FAA or?
Correct, so it was part of the project, so there's that 90-10 split with the FAA. So either in the case where there's the 10% split that we have to do with the FAA, they have the cash for that project. And then the other 90% comes from the FAA.
Okay, so this is not like we were short anything.
No, what really happened was in the 1920 budget, when we built the budget, we didn't really fully grasp how much was left of the project in terms of financing it. The project was the project and that specific project, I don't think saw an overrun in its total expenses. But what we put in the computer was wrong in terms of what we planned to spend. We didn't know how much they were gonna get done before the fiscal year. So we missed the mark in terms of saying the project will be this much complete. Turned out there was more.
Engineer estimates for airport, especially when you're talking about runway canceling, it's always
Right.
highly theoretical, I guess. And that's what happened with this. They had cost overruns that they didn't anticipate because of what the ground was like, so.
Right, yeah, I remember the discussions on like how the asphalt was getting all cattywampus and all that, so.
Okay, any further discussion on 486 from council? Any public comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll call for the vote. Ms. Bertha?
Councilmember Devlin,
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherwood.
Aye.
And Councilmember Vic.
Aye.
All right, motion passes unanimously. We'll move in then sequentially we'll call it Resolution 487, which is the budget amendment for the ambulance fund.
Quick question, I'm truly not trying to kick the can down the road here. But for a new ordinance, don't we need to post that in the paper?
No, because the public notice said you were amending the fiscal year 1920 budget.
Okay.
And you're not doing an ordinance, you're doing a resolution.
Okay.
And this would suffice amending the budget.
I'll make a motion to approve.
There's a second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Devlin, seconded by Mr. Scher to approve Resolution 487, amending the budget for the ambulance fund in fiscal year 1920. Council discussion?
I guess the same discussion that I had, what, a year and a half ago on a similar thing would be, so the money is, I guess the money has already come out of the general fund to pay for the things. We're just having to reappropriate it.
Correct.
Okay,
You're just moving it from one piggy bank to the next.
right, and the only reason we're doing this is because we have a billing system set up.
Correct.
And how much is that billing system costing us with us not making any runs?
It only costs us if we use it. So they take a percentage of whatever we bill.
Okay,
So if we bill 0, we pay 0.
okay.
Any further discussion from council?
Yeah, this is what makes CPAs rich.
Yeah, I know.
This is why we can't do our own taxes anymore. Nerve wracking.
Is there any public comment?
Can you explain the math on this? We're overran by 714, another overrun by 4,280, but you're asking for 9,800. Can you explain the math on that?
I think what we're covering is the overrun from the previous fiscal year that didn't get approved. Because we've got 2 fiscal years worth of a negative number in that fund.
So there should be another year's worth of money somewhere in there to make that balance out?
That's where the $9,800 is. $9,800 covers this fiscal year that we're amending and the previous.
That's already been audited.
Okay.
Any other public comment? Okay. Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. Ms. Britta?
Councilmember Devlin,
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherwood,
Aye.
and Councilmember Beck.
Aye.
All right, you next have before you then resolution 48, amending the fiscal year 1920 budget for the Creekside Lighting District.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second? Second. Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Devlin, second by Mr. Short to approve resolution 488. Council discussion?
I mean, after our lengthy discussion 2 years ago on lighting districts, kind of have a little bit of an understanding about it. My question is when is this cost gonna start going down to the people that live in these areas that are getting upgraded to LED lights?
So they already have gone down. The moment that those lights went into those respective subdivisions, the power bill dropped up between 40 and 50%. We reflected that in the 1920 budget, but we went too far down. So we thought we were going to save more money on the LEDs than we actually did. And we missed it by $460. So we were close. We were hoping it'd be closer to 50%, and I think specifically for that district, it was closer to 40% of the total drop. The other thing I think that changed in that district was when we reconciled the LEDs. Creekside is split into 2 districts billing wise. So phase 1 is on one bill and phase 2 is on another. And when we reconciled the lights, there was one light that got moved from one bill to the other. So that would also account for part of the mismark, because we didn't account for that one light. And just, it was a matter of which side of the line it sat on phase 2. Is there any further council discussion on 48? Public comment? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. Ms. Burkett?
Councilmember Devlin,
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherwood,
Aye.
Councilmember Beck.
No.
All right, motion passes 3-1. The next item of business then is discussion decision on the first reading ordinance 169. A resolution, an ordinance that amends the building and technical codes for the town of Stevensville. Periodically, the building codes division of the state updates new codes that trickle down into the municipalities. In this case, it's the International Energy Conservation Code. And they give us a time frame to get that code updated and reflected in our ordinances. One other piece that ordinance 169 does is repeals the NFPA 99C standard on gas and vacuum systems. That code was adopted the last time we modified codes. However, we do not have an inspector. Apparently those are few and far between. The current contractor that does the town's inspection, does almost every inspection but that one. So it needs to be repealed as it doesn't apply to the town of Stevensville, and the building codes division state level does not want us to have it adopted. So this ordinance does two things. It updates the energy conservation code and repeals the standard on gas and vacuum systems. That's it.
I'm done. Make a motion to approve ordinance number 169.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved by Mr. Shirt, seconded by Mr. Vick to approve first reading of ordinance 169. Council discussion? Public comment? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. Ms. Breakout.
Councilmember Devlin,
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherwood,
Aye.
and Councilmember Vick.
Well, I guess I want to learn more about gas and vacuum systems now, but
All right, motion passes unanimously.
Good luck.
This will be scheduled for second reading at your next meeting. Next item then, you guys are getting through these a lot faster than I thought we would.
I can slow down.
No, it's okay, no, it's quite all right. Discussion decision, planning and zoning boards, 2021-2022 work plan.
This will slow you down.
This might slow us down. I don't know as though it will. The planning and zoning board has talked in their meetings, and Mr. Ludington can attest to identifying the policy priorities that they'd like to work on over the next calendar year. Collectively, they thought the best way to get the council's blessing and feedback on whether that was appropriate action was to see if you'll approve a work plan for them over the next calendar year. So they had a meeting, we worked through an exercise to identify what those projects would be, what the tasks under those projects would look like, who's responsible for them, and when they thought they'd get them accomplished. Admittedly, it is a somewhat aggressive plan, but it is realistic in terms of timeframes. The nice thing is it holds individuals, the staff, the board, the council, and whatever committees to some sort of a line to say, okay, we got to work on this. We can't just push this off one more month. So it largely addresses the concerns and issues that have been raised through the Burford Estates review process in terms of land use and what a development code does, and the growth policy and master streets and transportation plan does. So they are listed in order of how they would kind of start or come to be. So more or less the plan is before your approval tonight. If you approve the plan, then the planning board will get right to work on it. They're kind of on track to hold some monthly meetings. If you want to offer any modifications or suggestions, this is your opportunity to do so.
I do really like the look of this. I like being able to send something back to the planning and zoning board that says, hey, this is what we want done. This is how we want it done. And I really like this type of format of being able to put like our objectives, our goals, objectives, and tasks, where we can say, you know, this is when we expect this to be done. I do like that. So with that, I'll make a motion to approve the work plan.
Sorry, second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Vick, seconded by Mr. Sherwood to approve the planning and zoning board's 21-22 work plan. Further council discussion?
One of the things that you'll see in here is that we are looking for a subcommittee, preferably members of the community or the town, most specifically, to help in voicing their concerns and helping us to form what we should really have as a standard for subdivision, so that we don't have to go through what we went through the last time. We can do better in application and trying to create partnerships and going forward with neighborhoods and that kind of thing. So we'll be looking for members of the community to help us out, to spend some time doing some research and meeting together. hash some things out.
And I just have one suggestion. I'm not saying, for us to make a motion to have this done, but it's a suggestion to the planning board, to, I guess, kind of do like a little color code that, so that shows like, we're coming up, if they're coming up close to the time when a task is due, but it's not like, it doesn't look likely that's gonna be on time, probably with a yellow or something like that, so we can say, okay, that task is running behind. And what can we do to correct that? I mean, that's the only thing I would really suggest, but I'm not gonna tack a motion into that.
Well, actually, Mr. Vick, I'm pleased to hear you suggest that because that's exactly what my sidewalk will do for us. We'll be able to insert initiative-based goals and priorities under certain sections of that site and be able to track the progress towards those, and they'll start to show whether we're on track to get those things done or not. And it uses exactly that coding, the red, yellow, green theory, where if you're smooth sailing, you're green, and if you're running up against deadlines, you might turn yellow. And if you're past those deadlines, it'll turn red. So not only will that be a good internal tool for the planning and zoning board to utilize, but it'll keep the public informed as to how we're doing towards that progress, because they'll be able to visualize that as well through the website. Sure.
I'm really excited to see this process moving forward. I'd prefer to see it done by July. But I understand it's gonna take some time.
Are you
I won't
volunteering
make a
for the
motion.
part? Are you planning for the planning board or volunteering?
No.
Oh,
Not currently.
that's
I
okay.
have a part for it.
Okay. This is actually a format where we'd like to maybe see it utilized by other boards as they're able to and willing to kind of formalize what their goals are going forward. So you may see this type of format come back going forward. Is there any further council discussion on approving the work plan? Public comment?
Bob Michelson, 222 Turner Street. I'd like to add that Mayor Dewey and I are the last two soldiers standing from 2016 when this was done. I was a rookie at the time, but it was probably the busiest year that I've ever had on a council. And Brandon was very active in it. We had many meetings, as Brandon can attest, over at the church. Reported back to the planning and zoning board. Victoria and Joan Prather and Main Street were very involved at the time. It's a big time. And I think it has to be done by law. And may I ask a question, Mayor Dewey, is there a grant for that, like there was in 2016, or the town gonna absorb that cost?
So with the growth policy, that's not something that the planning board has gotten fully into. It's identified on their work plan, and tonight they're only approving the work plan. They're not going towards the growth policy. The growth policy is identified as a project, and part of that process will be identifying how in-depth that policy needs to be done and what that cost would look like. It's not, so in 2016, we saw a large overhaul of the policy. We spent a lot of money on that, upwards of 50,000. We're hoping we don't have to spend that kind of money to rewrite a policy, and all we need to do is just go in and make updates.
Thank you.
Any further public comment on the work plan for the planning board? Okay, hearing none, then we'll go ahead and call for the vote. Ms. Berthoud.
Councilmember Devlin,
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherrod,
Aye.
and Councilmember Vick.
Aye.
All right, your next item of business is new business item F, discussion decision on a cost share for the replacement of fencing at Father River Valley Park. This is part of the Father River Valley Park renovation project. It was identified that a good portion of the fence on the north side of the park needs to be replaced. The property owner that neighbors us approached us about a cost share. Mr. Sunstein worked with the neighbor to identify, the total linear feet and all of those places that are involved in what the benefit to the town would be. There's no doubt that the town has a benefit to replacing the fence. In fact, I think that we are largely to blame for the deterioration of the fence as it stands due to our sprinkler system. It apparently sprays the fence. So while we address that, we would like to see the fence replaced, and because there's an opportunity to cost share, The administration is recommending that the council approve such a thing. Cost shares are a bit unusual in this kind of circumstance, and that's why it's coming before the council this evening, is that it's not directly addressed in our purchasing policy. The total cost to the town of Stevensville for the fence replacement would be $2,900, which is budgeted for in the renovation budget from the $25,000 that you approved for the Gene Thomas Parks Beautification Fund.
So this is not in addition to that 25,000 we had already approved.
No, sir, it's not. It's included in the return or in the 25,000.
Okay,
I think
I'll make a
one of the
motion to
que-
approve.
One minute, Jamie, you're jumping the gun. It's okay. Go ahead, Mr. Sherwood.
The questions that came up during park board is whether or not this needs to go through the bidding process.
So when we address that with Mr. Owens and discussing that from a legal standpoint, it's, like I said, it's not directly addressed as to whether it should or shouldn't go through some sort of a process in our purchasing policy, because we aren't the ones procuring the services. We are simply receiving an invoice from our neighbor who's procuring and doing all of that piece. We're not facilitating that. We're not facilitating the actual contract with the fence company or anything like that. We're simply reimbursing our neighbor for a portion of the fence. So given all those circumstances, we felt best prudent action would be just to get the governing body's blessing on the project, and we should be covered just fine.
I'll make a motion to approve the cost share for replacement of the fencing at Father Valley Park in the amount of $2,900.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Shirt, second by Mr. Ludington, to approve cost share for the replacement of fencing at Father Valley Park in the amount of $2,900. Any further council discussion?
this is my last question on it. Is this gonna affect any of the project that we already approved the 25,000 for?
No, Mr. Sunstein had budgeted for that when he originally proposed the 25,000.
Yeah, and I know you're stating yourself twice, and I apologize for that. I just wanted to be clear. So
Absolutely. Thanks for asking. Is there any further council comments? Public comment? Okay, with that, we'll call for the vote. Ms. Bertha.
Councilmember Devlin, I'll come back around to you, Jamie. Councilmember Ludington,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherwood,
Aye.
Councilmember Vic,
aye.
Councilmember Devlin,
Aye.
thank you.
All right, that motion passes. The next item on your agenda is item G, discussion decision on COVID-19 precautions at town council meetings. This was kind of a topic of conversation at your last council meeting as to how you'd like to handle precautions that are in place during council meetings. Currently, your ground rules that were previously adopted by council stated that attendees needed to wear a mask and that we would do a modified social distancing as whatever space we were in would allow. I'll just give you a couple of updates. I think anything you do tonight should be contingent on the library's policies, because we are using their space. And we'd like to be consistent with what they are asking of their facility use. So just bear that in mind if you make any modifications tonight. Also developed today was the CDC released guidelines that said those who are vaccinated no longer need to wear masks and can continue their pre-pandemic activities subject to the local things that happen in localities, so state and local laws. Bear that in mind, I guess, as well as you decide how you'd like to facilitate any precautions that are in place.
I do have a question because I think it was either yesterday or the day before, Governor Gianforte signed that bill that from my understanding of it, says that local governments can't enforce a mask mandate. And the way I view this is a form of one. And I just want to make sure that if by chance we chose to keep requiring masks in some way, shape, or form, that's not going to clash with that new law.
The way I approach that is just ask the question, do you intend to continue using masks in the library or in meetings? Then it's a moot point. I ask that question first.
It would be my preference to no longer use the masks in the meeting.
And my preference is to follow guidance from CDC as of today.
That would be my preference as well. I mean, I would ultimately like to see us get back to town hall to be able to meet in there and try to regulate from there as best we possibly can. But I also think that as long as we're meeting in the library, that we should, I think, first off, make our request known to the library that this is what we would like to do, and then respond to what they would recommend. I really think that using this space, we shouldn't be respectful of the people that are operating this facility.
I absolutely agree that we need to respect the space. I guess my concern in regards to the CDC guidelines, how the council would go about policing who has a vaccination and who doesn't, and who needs to have a mask on and who doesn't. I think that could become a very challenging.
I'll tell you, we won't.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
The honor system is how I would.
I think if you're going down the road of not requiring masks, subject to whatever policies the library has in place, we'll continue the social distancing measures in the space that we have available. And that would help mitigate any risk of someone who's not vaccinated spreading the disease within the mask.
I guess then to prioritize would be to respect the library's wishes, get rid of the masks and maintain the social distancing.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Jamie.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think a lot of the guidelines were put into place until vaccines were available to all parties that wanted it. Vaccines are available to all parties, and I believe they're available to children now as well. I'm not really in the mood to try and decide who's got a vaccine and who wants to wear a mask and who doesn't want to wear a mask. That's a battle that we've been having for over a year. I truly think that we're adults, and if people want to come into a group of people vaccinated, not vaccinated, wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, that frankly is none of our business. So wherever we have our meetings, I think that's my bottom line. But if we are borrowing somebody else's space, I don't believe that it is our right to go one side or the other from anything that they're respecting.
Okay, well, so what I'm hearing is, yeah, summarizing what Mr. Sherd stated, prioritize the library for the time that we're using this space, prioritize their wishes and their policies. We no longer require masks, and we can maintain the social distancing so long as we have the space to do so. Does the council want to proceed in that direction under consensus, or would you like to ratify that with a motion?
I'm fine with consensus,
I'm
and
fine with
then,
consensus.
once we can come to an agreement with the library, then we can do the whole.
Okay. Ms. Devlin, are you comfortable with that, proceeding in that way?
I'm sorry, I really couldn't hear.
So we're seeking consensus from the council that we prioritize the library's policy. Secondary to that, if we're allowed to not wear masks, we'll take them off, and we will maintain social distancing with the space we have.
I think that sounds fine.
Okay. With a head nod then from each council member, we'll proceed in that direction. And when another update is necessary, we'll re-agendize it.
And I call a comment for the library.
Oh, sure, I'm sorry.
That's
Just
okay.
move right along from that.
It
Go ahead.
just might be
Yes,
helpful.
absolutely.
We have a board meeting next week, and it's also on our agenda, and I feel pretty confident that we're going to probably get rid of the masks as well. So
Sure.
it'll be kind of a moot point after that.
Very good. I'll tell you, we've noticed, Janelle and I have to come in and set this room up usually about an hour ahead of the meeting, and we've noticed the chairs in here dwindling. We usually haul them out, so you guys wouldn't notice, but the chairs that are in here when we come in are dwindling, which means they're moving them back into the library for patrons to use. So that's a good sign that the library is getting back into activity. Mr. Michelson, you have some comment?
Yes, Bob Michelson, 222 Turner Street. As the, everything gets restricted, is there a way we could go back to town hall and have the meetings? Then we wouldn't have to worry about the library and your setup, take down, it takes the time. It's just something to think about going forward. I think we moved over here because of the pandemic, so sooner or later it's gonna have to go back there, I would hope. Thank you.
I'm gonna say what I said before, and that's, I missed my chair over there.
Me too.
We could roll your chairs over.
Yeah, I don't do that.
Any further public comment? Okay. We'll move on then into new business item H, discussion decision on a contract for construction services for the East Fifth Street, Fifth Street Improvements Project. To clarify one question that may or may not be raised, which is why this contract is coming forward and maybe some other contracts don't come before council, or perceived contracts that is. These contracts went through the state law process because they're contracts that are collectively over a certain dollar amount and they're public works related. So when you do construction services for public works type services under the state law, generally that threshold is $80,000 and you go through that mandated process. And that's why these are before you this evening at your request. If you recall, you did the bid award previously, and now the contracts are before you this evening. It is our intent to proceed with with a notice to proceed with the contractors on May 24th. So that's when I expect to see ground moving and shaking.
I'll make a motion to approve contracts. Are these contracts separated out?
They are, the Fifth Street is separate from the Third Street. They're two different contractors.
All right, let me resend my motion and make a motion to just go ahead and clump those two together.
Okay, Mr. Vick's making a motion to consider the Fifth Street and Third Street projects together.
Second.
And it's been seconded by Mr. Shurd. Is there council discussion on considering the two together? Public comment? All right, call for the vote, Ms. Berthoud.
Councilmember Devlin,
Aye.
Councilmember Lenington,
Aye.
Councilmember Shurd,
Aye.
and Councilmember Vick.
Aye.
Okay, no matter how you dice it, it's two votes. Before you tonight is consideration of the contract for construction services for both Fifth Street and Third Street projects with two separate contractors.
I make a motion to approve both contracts.
Second. Okay, it's been moved in by Mr. Vick, seconded by Mr. Shurd to approve both contracts. Council discussion?
The contracts are essentially the same.
Right.
It's pretty much a boilerplate contract. I like the language. I don't think we're gonna have an issue proceeding forward.
Any further council comment on the contracts? Public comment on the contracts, Mr. Michelson.
Bob Michelson, 222 Turner Street. I'd like to know if the Public Works is gonna work with the Third Street to fix those leaks that George and I and you talked about last summer, Brandon, when we were putting this all together. It would be a shame to go over that and not fix those big leaks down there by Groninger and that. So thank you.
Any further public comment? Okay, it's within the contract language. It is part of the project to replace every water and sewer service down the street. So every service will be new from wherever the main lies under the pavement to the edge of the pavement.
The spot where it's not.
Where the service won't be new.
Where it's not under the pavement.
Oh, yeah, there are a couple spots where some houses will receive a new sewer service, some will receive a new water service, some will receive both. Just depends on the block where the sewer line runs on what side of the road, because a water line can run out of the pavement or under the pavement and vice versa with sewer. So it just kind of depends. It's an odd number of who's what, and some of them are in corners and water comes off Pine and sewer comes off Third, and it throws the whole accounting off, and it was a cluster to try to count them all up.
But it's plus for when we do it.
Mm-hmm. But those will all be new so that we're not digging up any new asphalt. Any further public comment or council discussion before we call for the vote? All right, very good, Ms. Berthoud.
Councilmember Devlin,
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington,
Aye.
Councilmember Sure.
Aye.
Councilmember Beck.
Aye.
All right, the next item of business then is discussion decision. The contract. Let's skip that one. Repairs to the swimming pool. Okay. So last summer, we identified that there was a pretty significant leak in the swimming pool. And so the season was shortened to 1 month. We only ran the month of July last year because we were losing so much water. Collectively, the swimming pool used 130,000 gallons in that 1 month. And that includes filling it, of course, but a good size of that water, about 40 to 50,000 gallons of it, was just lost out of the pool itself or used otherwise. So we knew that the pool, specifically the baby side of the pool, the short 2-foot section, was an issue for us. So we closed the pool down early and immediately began evaluating it. We had an HDR engineering out there to kind of analyze and figure out how the pool sat in space and what was going on. Ultimately, then what happened was that we needed to figure out what kind of material was underneath of the pool. We determined that the floor of the baby pool, and I'll preface this, the main pool is fine. So the main section of the swimming pool is fine. And it's actually, we determined it to be very solid and it's not moving. The baby pool, however, we found the floor was sinking away from the footers, and that was what was causing the leakage. And it was losing anywhere between 2 to 3 inches an hour out of that surface area. So given that there's 24 inches in that pool altogether, it didn't take long to drain. So the engineers determined that the main pool was solid. It actually sits pretty level in terms of the space around it. That the footers and floor had separated from the baby pool, and that the baby pool was sinking. So Public Works did some drilling on the floor to figure out what material was underneath. They evaluated that. One theory was that maybe we could just pump grout underneath of that floor to stabilize it to keep it from sinking any further. Another theory was the material underneath may just need to be recompacted or compacted, period, and that we just need to redo a floor with rebar. We also didn't know what the floor was really made of in the first place in terms of if there was rebar in it or not. We couldn't find any rebar. Turns out there wasn't. We ended up going the option after they analyzed the soils underneath. We went the option to tear it out and recompact. Turns out it wasn't compacted in the first place. It just appears that we just poured concrete over dirt. So that's the route we went in repairing it. So the new floor was poured with, it's a bit shallower than the old baby pool was. We raised it just a little bit to get some more material in there to help level it. And then it's rebarred, so that floor isn't going to sink for quite a while. We approached this with the idea that whatever fix we implemented, we didn't want to repeat in 3 years. Whatever fix we implemented, we did not. We did want to extend the useful life of that facility. Needs assessments and evaluations of how the pool is utilized have determined that pool sufficiently serves, while not ideal, it does sufficiently serve the need to the community. It provides an educational area for kids to learn to swim. It prevents drowning in the accessory water that is in our community, and provides that outdoor water recreation opportunity in a safe environment. We don't see pool loads and patron loads that exceed the capacity of the pool on a regular basis. In fact, we rarely ever see that. Unless, temperatures climb really, really high, and we may see some heightened capacity, but we never really exceed capacity and have to turn people away. So like I said, while the facility altogether, is I think upwards of 70 years old and is less than ideal and isn't necessarily pretty and shiny and new, it serves its purpose for the community. And we felt it was realistic to expect that maybe we could get another 10 years out of that facility, knowing that the main pool is solid and that the repair to the baby pool would extend the useful life that long. So in comes the funding piece of this, and the reason that it's before you tonight is really just to give you an update and to allow you the opportunity to provide feedback as to how specifically you'd like these repairs funded. Funding is available through a number of sources. We designated a budget of $10,000 to repair the pool in the last capital improvement fund budget starting in July 1st. So that covers automatically $10,000 of the repair. Which is going to cost us roughly $17,500. That's the estimate we received for all in done. And that includes recoating the pool as well, I should add. So that's the total fix of 17,000.
Said and done for the whole thing.
Said and done, we will be all finished with the swimming pool. Because there was a whole thing. I'll tell you, out of all the projects that I've been involved in with the town of Stevensville, that have cost us hundreds and hundreds and thousands of dollars and have had tons of drawings and engineering work and all these things. For whatever reason, this little project has been one of the most complex, but very elaborate moving pieces that I've ever dealt with, and just the idea of getting all these different pieces together. So let me just address the real quick, where the funding lies for these pieces, and then you can ask your questions and we can further discuss. So the funding for $10,000 of it exists within the capital improvement budget. There's also room then in the Parks and Recreation budget out of the general fund, because of the pandemic and the way everything laid out, that budget looks very, very healthy, and is not anticipated to overrun, and we will see an underspending in that budget specifically. In addition to that, Mr. Sunstein has reached out to the Community Foundation, who had some money set aside back in 2010 when the pool underwent a rehab at that time. Not all of the funding was spent at that time for that rehab project. And there's about $6,000 or $7,000 left of that funding with the Community Foundation. So Mr. Sunstein's working with them to see if that funding, and right now, all indications point that yes, that funding is available for this project and could go towards this cause. So we've pretty well got the project paid for through all of those funding sources. So I'm not necessarily here to tell you or to ask you to increase the budget in any one necessary line, but more or less to brief you on the rapid progression of this project. And I'll say rapid because we didn't have a full evaluation or a path to go down in terms of whether the floor was to stay or go. So very, very recently, in that then we knew we were up against an opening date, and we did not want to see the opening date pushed out, given the school is out early. We can't really start the pool any earlier than June 1st, and right now, because of staffing and other circumstances, in part because of this project, June 7th is that opening date. So we did not have time to really sit on our hands and fully evaluate what the best direction was, but rather just to say, okay, we're gonna have to take this action in order to get the pool open and provide service to the community. There you have it. In a nutshell.
I was just gonna ask, isn't this an awful lot of work for a hole in the ground?
Couldn't we just dig a new hole every
Yeah.
year?
Yeah, it is a lot of work, and all throughout the entire project, I think to a point where it might have driven our engineers crazy. Mr. Sunstein and I both repeated ourselves multiple times to say, we will not be back here in a year and a half to 3 years, correct? There's some rhetoric out there that this pool is a lost cause or that this is a lot to spend all of a sudden. This pool provides a vital service to the community in just the swim lesson instruction. The secondary to that, we fixed the problem permanently. When we tore it apart, you could tell where it had been attempted to fix, but it was not a permanent fix. This is a fix. We should never see that slab will crack undoubtedly, but we shouldn't have to put more than $10,000 into repairing the concrete structure of that pool for the rest of its useful life.
And you're anticipating that the rest of the useful life is 10 years? Is that what I heard correctly? Or?
We're hoping for that, yes. We're saying, okay, looking long-term at the way the community is growing, if we could get 10 years out of this pool, we'd be sitting really well. And that would buy the governing body some time to strategize its eventual replacement. And that eventual replacement may not happen in 10 years, but maybe in 10 years, you'll at least have a plan for it.
And how much of this 17.5 do we have or is unaccounted for that we don't know yet where we're getting our funding source from?
Well, if the foundation comes through, then I think the only funding that's not line itemed for this project is about $1,500 to $2,000. But that room is available in Bobby's budget through other areas that he didn't spend. So the spending authority is there throughout the budget, with the exception of the grant. That's the area where we're gonna have to obviously fix the accounting for that. But outside of that, the spending authority, is there today to write the check if we needed to. So it's not an area where we're going over budget in terms of the overall budget. It's an area where the project itself is really overrunning its budget, where we anticipated, if you recall, I think our original projections, we were thinking that the pool could cost us up to $20,000 to fix.
I remember that.
And then the engineers backed down and said, well, if we can just do maybe a few of these things, and we might be sitting okay. And so we thought $10,000 was a more appropriate budget to do. We were wrong. So.
And then I guess my last question, would be, so the work has already been completed, correct?
With the exception of the coating, yes, the slab, you can go look at it if you'd like. The slab is in there and it's curing currently.
Okay.
So like I said, I'm not necessarily here to ask you for, permission on the project, but more or less to give you an update as to where we sit on it, because there's some gravity to the situation, and then you can provide whatever feedback you'd like in terms of how you'd like to see it addressed, if there are any pieces to that. But if there's nothing, then that's okay.
And I do know of a couple of different organizations for grants that I can get with you and Bobby about later on.
Sure. Okay. Is there anything further from the council on that subject? Okay, we'll move on. Your last item of business then is discussion decision on cancellation or rescheduling of the June 24th, 2021 town council meeting due to council member planned absences. So I was notified by 2 and 3 council members. I thought it was 2, but apparently it's 3 council members that they would be out of town and would not be able to attend that meeting due to other scheduling conflicts. So it does not look like you will be able to hold a meeting because you won't have a quorum on the 24th. So the question I have for you is, do you want to cancel the meeting altogether and pay claims out of cycle, or do you want to reschedule that for an alternative date that week?
Is there any expectation of some major issues coming that need to be addressed, other issues?
No, part of the reason we brought this up over a month in advance was because we wanted, if you were going to cancel the meeting, then Janelle and I will formulate your agendas accordingly. This agenda was obviously a heavy agenda. And then your next agenda won't be as heavy because I have some travel arrangements I'm making as well. So your June 10th will probably be another kind of moving and shaking meeting, and then depending on if you reschedule or go forward and just cancel, then we'll agendize accordingly. there's nothing to say that you cancel the meeting, something comes up that's urgent, then there's nothing that says I can't call a special meeting in 48 hours. So that opportunity exists. So it's just council's preference if you want a gap between meetings.
I'm not in a position to commit to rescheduling.
I'll make a motion to cancel the June 24th meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Schultz, seconded by Mr. Ludington to cancel the June 24th town council meeting. Would council be opposed to an amendment to allow the administration to pay claims out of cycle?
No.
Yes.
Could someone so move that?
So
Okay. Mr. Schurz moved to amend the motion to allow for the council to pay claims out of cycle. Is there a second to the amendment?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, second, Mr. Ludington, discussion on the amendment?
Oh,
Okay, public comment on the amendment. Mr. Michelson. The amendment is to allow the council to pay claims out of cycle.
I know this is out of order, but you guys didn't vote on that last, the swimming pool
There was no vote required.
discussion. decision.
Correct. Just because it says decision doesn't mean that one will happen. Back to the matter at hand. Is there a public comment on amending the motion to allow the administration to pay claims out of cycle?
This is back to item J.
State your name and address for the record, please. If it's not concerning the amendment, please
Don't shut me up.
Ms. Rodobob, we're gonna keep control of the meeting. We're asking specifically for public
You're
comment.
very nervous about item J, I know. You paid for
Ms.
something.
Rodobob, Ms.
The
Rodobob, please
council-
take your seat or we'll adjourn.
Or the
we'll-
council voted.
Ms. Rodobob? Please take your seat. If you're not going to speak on the item at hand,
You
you're
didn't
not
give
allowed
us
to
a
speak.
chance. You went right over it and went into something else.
Ms. Rodobob, I've asked you to sit down. If you are not going to speak to the item
I'm
that the council's
asking you to
considering.
allow me as a public.
All right, we'll
citizen-
adjourn for a recess for 10 minutes. Mr. Sosa, please escort Ms. Rodobob out.
No, you can't.
Yes, you can.
There was no, he paid for something and didn't ask you guys.
Well, and like I said, I was gonna try to get it on that one, it still had to go through all of the departments, and that didn't get finalized till this month. Not a problem whatsoever. It's exactly the same as yours, so it's just that there's no street closures. So.
Ms. Rodobob, don't be disrespectful.
It just has to go.
So proceed as though it's been,
Do we?
okay,
Thanks.
because they say they will approve it.
And the porta potties. So the bathroom facilities at the park will accommodate that. That was discussed with the public works director this morning when he reviewed the application as well. So don't worry about that one. No, you're good. Apologize that didn't get moved a little bit quicker through the departments, but you will be good on the 27th for sure on that. Don't worry. Move forward on it.
Oh,
She's the one that's the only that gets approved quick enough. Sorry, I told her it would be fine. Yes.
Something in the water, I'm telling you.
we need to talk public works then about that.
There's something wrong in Stevensville. No, I brought my own. It's spicy.
All right.
Thanks for that, Patrick.
I felt like I had to tell you something.
Thought you were just funny.
Oh, just outright. Thank you.
We're walking. All
We're
right.
walking.
You opposed to starting earlier?
Unless we think someone's gonna come back.
I think the one person is not coming back. Sure, the rest of them.
Maybe so the board of associates going to join us again.
Oh, no, I'm sure he's probably ready to just go home. You know?
I'm sure, yes, he's been.
I was hanging out with the other commissioners.
Okay. All right, we convene after recess for the Stevensville Town Council meeting, May 13th, 2021. The council is considering an amendment to a motion to cancel or reschedule, or excuse me, to cancel the June 24th council meeting. The amendment on the floor was to allow the administration to pay claims out of cycle due to the cancellation of that meeting. Is there any public comment on the amendment? Okay.
I do have a quick question on that. We'll still see those claims at a later time.
Correct. You'll ratify those at your follow-up meeting.
Okay.
Yep, I guess my only concern is that's the, last meeting of the fiscal year, so there may be some stuff that carries over that might not have.
Yeah, we'll pay everything we can and get that done, and that'll show up on your July set of claims. It's not atypical of us to have things in transit. Okay, with that, let's call for the vote on the amendment to the motion. Ms. Bertha?
Councilmember Devlin,
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherry,
Aye.
Councilmember Vic.
Aye.
That's mine. I
No,
apologize.
it was me.
Okay, the motion on the floor then, as amended, is to cancel the June 24th town council meeting, allowing the administration to pay claims out of cycle. Public comment on canceling the meeting. Any last words from the council? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. Ms. Bertha?
Councilmember Devlin,
Aye.
Councilmember Ludington,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherry,
Aye.
and Councilmember Vic.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes. Spot for this, that doesn't screen anything. The town council received the administrative reports from the department heads, and so you have been briefed, I think, on departmental matters. One thing I'll just brief you, we've had two meetings with the department heads where we started a communication and status meeting with internally in the organization between departments, where on Thursday mornings we gather and hold a meeting and provide updates and announcements and all of those things to improve the internal communication inside the organization between the departments. Out of our workshop on Fifth Friday, we were made aware that some departments aren't as informed in the organization as others, primarily because of their volunteer status in the organization. In order to address that, then we thought it'd be best idea to try a weekly meeting and see if that improves communication. I venture to say after two meetings that it's been successful, and that I think people feel more informed, and that they have a better idea of the productivity of their department as opposed to others and that sort of thing. So success there. I don't have any other, I think, primary items to bring to your attention out of the executive report. I will address what just happened, because I think it probably needs to be addressed, and some may disagree with me, but I've remained extremely patient with Ms. Rodabaugh. I've allowed her to go to great lengths in disrupting our meetings with the disrespect that she shows me and all of you, the members of our council. And I'll speak candidly. She stirs around with her plots to destroy my credibility, my reputation, perhaps even my career, an emphasis on me. She attacks myself, my family, the staff. anyone who might have a sense to see the good work that we're trying to accomplish for our community here and the benefits to the community that this organization achieves for a better quality of life. And while she's done all of that, I've had an opportunity to observe these meetings throughout the community and come to the realization rather that this isn't about accountability for her. I think you all know this, I welcome accountability and see absolutely nothing wrong with being held accountable, but that's not what she's about. That's not what's being achieved. I remember early on that Ms. Rodabaugh came into my office early on in her involvement, coming to meetings and such, where she wanted to lend me advice. And at that point, even offered to care for Carter while I worked, because there was contention around Carter coming to work with me. And based on, I'll tell you, based on the experience I've had with Ms. Rodabaugh to date, it unequivocally scares the hell out of me that she'd be around my children, anywhere near them. She's shown an obsession with how I conduct myself in all respects of my life, career or personal. It's unnerving to the point that my home becomes a fortress at night in fear that she might try to harm someone I love. And to be clear, I'm not afraid of a little lady, if you want to phrase it that way. That's not what I fear. I've only observed a person who doesn't have limits to damage. I volunteered, you know this, and some of you have been right alongside me doing that. I volunteered thousands of hours in this community to no other reason to make it a better place. I've done so humbly because that's a principle I was raised in this community with. I think that that resounds with all of us. I contribute to Stevensville in positive ways through civic organizations or projects, and even here at this table within our town government. I guess the point is Ms. Rodabaugh's causing some pain and damage to this community that I don't want to stand for any longer. A person doesn't participate like that in any other way but to attack and dismantle the good that so many of us are working day in and day out to accomplish. And if you wish to serve as the town crier, then contribute something that gives you a seat at the table to create change that you want to see. Hiding behind your computer screen or your keyboard and spouting lies at the podium and making accusations that are unfounded, that doesn't create change for our community. It only creates hate and conflict. We don't do that in Stevensville. We don't hate. And we don't do conflict. There's a long history of that that's been allowed to go on. And I just wish that would stop. If we're after a goal, then let's talk about what that goal is and how we can help achieve it, rather than going on this road of trying to tear people down and obstruct progress for our community. I get so tired of people twice my age who lived here half as long as me telling me that I'm ruining this town, and I don't see that when it's just so few. And those people themselves won't contribute in any other way. And I'm not expecting everyone to join the Civic Club and help build a splash pad, but I don't see them anywhere helping. Instead of complaining about the pool costing us so much money, what if we sat back and said, well, thank God we could do that. Thank God we were prepared to say, if we need to fix the pool, we'll fix it, rather than just shutting it down and having the community cry out to the council that you're taking a vital service away from their kids. So I'll just leave you with those remarks. I guess the bottom line, I'm done with that. We're not doing that here anymore. If that's how it's going to be, I'm not interested in participating. I can go find other things to do with my time. I think everybody could. So forgive me if it appears I lose my temper in meetings going forward on that kind of outburst, but I'm not allowing it any further. I've reached the end of the rope there. So thanks for your indulgence. Town council comments?
Yeah, first off, I'm gonna start off with, I got, all of us here got an email from, Ms. Devlin, concerning a comment that I had made when, we were discussing an item agenda where I said, well, Mr. Mayor, this is one of the few times that I agree with you. Fact of the matter is, I was attempting to make a lighthearted comment. It's sitting at this table sometimes can be dull and whatnot. It's not always exciting and everything. I do love it, don't get me wrong there. I was just trying to break the monotony. And for anybody out in the public that may have thought that I was trying to bring a personal bias into this meeting, I apologize. That was not my intent. Fact of the matter is, there are some things the mayor and I do agree on. There's some things that we disagree on. But whenever it comes to my decision making here at this seat, I don't allow my personal bias to come here. I just honestly do what I believe is best in the best interest of this town. And real quick too, I am wanting to seek some advice from either the mayor, the rest of the council about my board appointment, because my work schedule, I am unable to make those board meetings. And it's not fair to the airport. And this is something I discussed with the airport board the other night. They were not interested in moving their meeting date. And so I was looking to see if anyone had meetings that occurred on a different night, if they would like to swap boards with me. And then we can go forward if we come to an agreement on that. And that's all I've got.
I made a note of your request, MC, regarding switching boards. So what I'll do is fire off an email to council, see what interest there is in a trade or a take on, and we can then agendize that on the next meeting for you guys to consider a rearrangement, however that looks. And I'll outline meeting dates for each board in that for you. Further town council comments?
I don't have a comment, just regarding a question regarding the upcoming planning and zoning meetings. Was there a decision in regards to whether or not those would be in person or if they would continue in Zoom?
My sense is, Paul can speak to this maybe better than I can, but my sense is that the board is inclined for the time being to continue Zoom meetings, really out of convenience for some board members. Is that your read as well?
I think there probably is. I think a lot of the. I think the probably part of the issue is that most of these meetings are long. And they're going to continue to be long, probably for the next 12 to 14 months until we can get some of this stuff updated and on kind of a fast track. So when you start a meeting at 6:30, for people who don't work in town, it makes it hard for them to get to where they need to be on time. So I think it works okay for me. I don't mind being at home. I think if we start to hear, and that's probably part of the reason that I was really pushing for a subcommittee of people to try to speak out to this in a separate forum that we can then bring together to try to resolve some issues so that we can meet independently and not have to contend with the pandemic as it continues to go on ad infinitum. So yeah, I think that's probably what we will do. I think there will be a time when we will have to meet together to try to come to some recommendations for the council. But until then, I think a lot of this groundwork is probably going to be happening independent of each other, coming together and comparing notes, deciding where we're going to move forward from there. So
we'll maintain virtual participation protocols for any virtual meeting that occurs in the organization from a public board perspective. So any board that's inclined to hold Zoom meetings will continue to do that, because I think they're actually kind of an interesting tool from a workshop perspective. Then we'll continue that virtual participation piece. Okay. Any further council comments? Jamie, I can't see you, so I don't know if you're.
I'm I'm debating if I want to have a council comment tonight or wait until next. I think I'm gonna wait.
Okay, fair enough.
What I will say to the council is that I will be gone in June, a couple of different instances. Out of state, so I will be able to attend the meeting on the 10th and would be here for the 24th, but I will be out of the state for a couple of different times in June.
All right, any board reports?
I do think it's kind of funny that I just said that I'm not able to make those meetings, but this week I was able to make the airport board meeting because of a small shift in my schedule at work, but really the biggest thing that the board voted on and has really passed on to the county commissioners is the county gravel pit is almost at the end of its life. There's only about a year and a half, 2 years of gravel left in that pit. They are looking to see if we can allow them to start breaking for gravel on the north side. The runway, even after the extension project goes through, whenever it happens, will still be within it'll be safe distance and all that. But once the county commission takes care of their thing, we'll see it come back to us for approval. That was my recommendation to the board. The good thing out of this is it looks, from what they're seeing right now, based on current technology, it's about 30 to 50 years of gravel there. And at an estimated $1 million for the total project. Like that wouldn't be our cost, that would be what the airport receives.
Revenue.
So they're estimating per year be around $20,000 extra a year. So just depends on how much they break out there. And the climate change advisory board is still chugging along. Still looking for members if anyone wants to join in.
All right, any other board reports from the council? All right, anything else for the order then? All right, hearing nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thanks for your time this evening. And